When it comes to cars and beauty, everyone has a different opinion, and it's a little subjective. In the 1970s, it was no different. Perhaps you enjoyed the muscle cars in the earlier part of the decade, or you might have liked the huge land yachts that appeared in the latter part. Mixed right in the middle of the decade are some cars that were smaller and cheaper. Auto manufacturers were trying to change what they were doing, but in the process, they created some really bad cars. In this video, we will take a look back at some 1970s ugly cars that no one wants back. The AMC Gremlin was introduced in 1970 in order to compete with the emerging market for compact cars. The car was cheaper than most other small cars, so it was sort of a runaway sales success. However, the rear portion of the car had an odd shape, and it looked like they never finished designing it and just quit in the middle of the process. Either that, or maybe it was designed to be a barf bag on an airplane. Not only was it ugly, but it was awful to drive. It had a heavy 6-cylinder motor, and it was pretty choppy handling thanks to its loss of suspension in the back. The car also featured vacuum-operated windshield wipers, as if it didn't suck enough. The Gremlin was quicker than other subcompacts, which was a benefit because you could get away from all the laughter faster. Thankfully, this car was no longer made after 1978. The Chevy Vega hit the market in 1971 and it became a bestseller. Even Motor Trend named it Car of the Year for 1971. The car featured some innovative ideas with its aluminum block engine and a new method of rust proofing, but unfortunately, neither one was enough. The engines were horrible and almost completely unreliable, while the body was extremely vulnerable to corrosion. This car was so bad that even junkyards were refusing to purchase them in the late 1970s. The Vega went away for good in 1977, and it was certainly one of the worst small cars ever made by the American car market. If you could not afford a Mustang in the 1970s, then maybe a Pinto was an option for you. Both featured horses, so what could possibly be so bad about it? If the ugly design wasn't enough to stop you, then maybe the possibility of exploding was. Pintos were sold from 1971 to 1980, and the earlier years of the Pintos ruined any success that the car would ever enjoy in the future. If the car was rear-ended, it could instantly burst into flames because of a defective fuel tank design. Ford reportedly knew about the design flaw but decided to do nothing after calculating that paying off the lawsuits was cheaper than re-engineering the car. Some have said that the cost to repair this design flaw would have only been $1, so I guess that's Ford's value on human lives. That may sound horrible, but it's actually true. If you wanted an ugly and dangerous car, then this was the one for you. The Brazilian car market didn't care for the car either. The word Pinto in Portuguese is slang for male genitalia. The Reliant Robin was a 3-wheeled small car that was made from 1973 to 2002. 3-wheeled cars were popular in Britain beginning in the 1950s because of British tax loopholes that allowed 3-wheel cars to be taxed as motorcycles, and it only required a motorcycle license to operate them. This car became the butt of many jokes thanks to its 3-wheel design and fiberglass body shell. It was sometimes affectionately nicknamed the Plastic Pig because of its distinctive shape. The Robin was a little dangerous to drive because of the 3 wheels, and occasionally you might need someone to help you get it back upright after you turned it over while making a turn too sharply. When the Ford Mustang II came out in 1974, it was a far cry of what the Mustang used to be like in the 1960s and early 70s. The body style was small and ugly in an attempt to make it more fuel efficient, which was perfect after the 1973 oil crisis. Overall, it looked cheap, and it was really just another poor-performing Pinto derivative. Mustang lovers hated it, and it was sort of like having a flat and watered-down Coca-Cola, and who wants one of those? Apparently not too many, because the design was scrapped in 1978. The AMC Pacer was intended to be radically different when it came out in 1975, and that it was. It was a small car with huge windows, and it sort of looked like a fishbowl on wheels. There were definitely no blind spots in this thing, which was a little embarrassing because everyone could see you driving this ugly car. The 1992 film Wayne's World featured an AMC Pacer, which sort of cemented this car as a laughable one for everyone in the future. Thankfully, there has never been another car like it since it was discontinued in 1980. The Austin Allegro was launched in 1973 for the 1974 year, and it was intended to be a radical clean sheet design by the British Leyland. However, the car became strongly criticized because of its poor quality and odd styling. The car also seemed like it would have been more aerodynamic if it had driven backwards, and it also had an odd-shaped square steering wheel. This car continued to be manufactured until 1982, and not one of them was ever exported for sale in the U.S. If you are in the market for another ugly car, then take a look at the Morris Marina. It's another car that was not only unattractive, but it was also poor in performance. This is a car that should have never been produced in the first place. Today, you'll probably see a riding lawnmower with a better design than this thing, and even a wheelbarrow has better suspension. Somehow, this hideous car was on the market from 1972 to 1980. The Bricklin SB1 was sort of a kit car that was put together from Ford and American Motors' leftover parts. It was developed and produced by Malcolm Bricklin, who funded the car thanks to funds acquired by the government of the Canadian province of New Brunswick. The car was only available in 1975. After that, consumers realized how horrible it was, and production ceased after the company went into receivership. The Chevrolet Chevette came out in 1976, and it was a cheap alternative to any other American car. Anyone that owned one of these usually said that they had a Vette, hoping that others thought that they had a Corvette. But this thing wasn't even close. It had poor performance, poor build quality, and it felt even cheaper than it was to buy. Somehow, this car wasn't even a flop, and it stayed on the market until 1987. In fact, in 1979 and 1980, it was the best-selling small car in America. More than 2.7 million cars were produced during its lifetime. This was another car that was mechanically troubled, and it's probably not one that you'll ever see at a classic car show. No one was ever really proud of it. The Porsche 914 was in production from 1969 to 1976. Technically, it might be considered a 60s car, but since more of the models are in the 1970s, we'll include it in this video. The 914 was designed, manufactured, and marketed in a joint effort between Volkswagen and Porsche. It was a mid-engine car that had sort of a strange design. Normally, Porsche cars are something that many people dream of having, but this one is not what people had in mind. It's really about as goofy as a Porsche could actually be. Another great American design for a car came with the ugly aeroback cars from General Motors. The Buick Century and Olds Cutlass had a radical slope in the rear, and it's another car that looked like it could have been more aerodynamic if it had driven in reverse. These ugly gems were on the market from 1978 to 1980, and GM offered a more performance-themed version of each, but that did not help them have any more success. They were embarrassing at the time, and they're even worse now. The Volkswagen Thing came out in 1973 in the US, and it was a civilian version of the military vehicle roll call, which was used in Germany in the 1960s. The car had an incredibly boxy design that looked like some sort of metal tackle box. Not only was it ugly, but it was super slow. It had the same exact engine as a Volkswagen Beetle, but it was even less aerodynamic. It was meant to appeal to Jeep owners, but in the end, we can clearly see who won. The model was dropped from the American lineup in 1975 because it failed to meet new, stricter U.S. safety standards. The car continued to be sold in other countries until 1980, and then it became a thing of the past where it belongs. For many people, the 1970s will forever be a part of them, except when it comes to ugly cars and disco. Everything was changing and automakers were trying to figure out where they needed to go next. Many of these creations needed to be scrapped long before they were ever put into production because they were so bad. These ugly 1970s cars are certainly nothing that anyone ever wants back. Did we miss any cars that should have made the list? Or perhaps you would like to share your experience with one of these ugly cars. Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.